What up, what up, what up, Brookago? This is Kahlief Adams. This is the Spawn on Me podcast, episode 315 of our show. I am amazingly excited today. I am super hyped about everything that's about to go down today on the show. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us this week and every week here in Xbox land, in X-Ray land, in Twitch land, and on podcast land, of course, where you can find us every Tuesday when we drop a new episode of our show. Huge shout out to everybody who listened to the show last week. We had the dope folks from Brass Line Entertainment talking all about Corner Wolves, and that was fantastic. Massive love to Munveer and the rest of the crew for talking about the diversity that they are going to bring to the gaming space in a real way. I am very, very excited about that because it is going to be super, super cool. This week, we are doing a whole bunch of cool stuff today because, first of all, we're on the front page of Twitch, so that's going to be amazing out the box. But if you have been watching me lose my mind on the internet, on Twitter, you have known that I have been super excited about who we have on the show this week in particular. We have Die Hardman himself, Tommie Earl Jenkins, rocking with us on the show. Let me tell you just how excited I am for all of that. Tommie, thank you so much for coming and rocking with us here in Brookago tonight. I'm super excited to have you on.
Absolute pleasure, man. I'm so hyped to be here. This is awesome.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, when I like hit you in your DMs, I literally slid into your DMs and was like, "Hey," I was like, Tommie, first of all, I love your work and I'm super excited to have you rock with us. But first of all, coming off of such a huge game, you don't expect sometimes to snag the people that you're actually hoping to get. So again, thank you so much for rocking with us tonight.
Pleasure, man.
First of all, how are you doing? How's everything going right now?
I'm good, man. I'm absolutely good. I'm just I'm riding the Death Stranding wave at the moment. I mean, just the support for this game and for Hideo and the entire team has been absolutely incredible, off the charts. And the support, like I said, especially even for myself, along with all the heavy hitters I've been working with in this game, has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's been like one of the coolest parts about this whole experience, just from the outside looking in, has been just seeing the amount of love that you have gotten from the community. It's been it's not like I'm stalking your Twitter feed, but it's been really, but it's been super dope to see like so many people just giving you love and spreading love and being really hyped for you. Can you talk a little bit about, what's that been like in the past couple of weeks and knowing that the game was going to be coming out and kind of having this expectation for what might be coming? What are your thoughts been about that?
For me, I think it probably goes back a little further than just within the last couple of months. I think from the moment that my character was announced at the Tokyo Games, that very first moment, I think Troy and I were both announced at the same time. And I think from that moment, I started to get a little bit of, contact with more people on Twitter and stuff. And that kind of broke it down a little bit. Recently, it's just been an incredible onslaught of nothing but so much love and support from everyone. I can't even begin to, to describe what that's really been like, aside from the fact that, I think you put your work into something, and we do it as actors. We do it because we love doing it. We also do it because it gives us something that enables us to then give to other people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of love and support that I've been feeling, like I said, has been absolutely overwhelming. And also for this particular character. And I don't think people really had any full idea of the arc of this particular character. I think he was just very understated throughout, and then it leads up slowly to this explosion. And, it's been absolutely wonderful. And everyone's response to it has been so positive, I feel blessed and overwhelmed and completely loved.
The people in the chat right now are losing their mind. So they are like, "Yo, Tommie needs to get an Oscar. Tommie needs to win all the awards."
That's crazy.
I mean, one of the things, and I'm happy that you touched on it when you talked about the kind of subtlety that Die Hardman kind of brings to the table in his arc within the game. I actually, you know what, we're gonna come back to that sentiment because what I want to know first was,
yes,
you know, when you started the process of kind of joining the team and joining the cast for this game, what was the process like? I know that for most actors, sometimes your agents will pitch a thing, or they'll get a call from someone to say, "Hey, we're thinking about snagging you for this role." What was the process like for you to jump on Death Stranding as a project?
My process was probably unlike, some of the more known actors. My process went from another direction in terms that I was contacted by my agent with a breakdown. I had to do what we call a self-tape of a couple of scenes with no full description about the character, but I had to bring my interpretation based on, the little bit that I knew. He was a commander. He had gravitas, and that was kind of it. There was nothing about his story and where it was going, nothing. So I submitted this self-tape back, and I didn't hear anything for a while. And I just, as an actor, we get so used to doing that, we let things go and move on to the next, because that's just how the turnover works for us in this industry. Yeah. And then when I did get a response back, they wanted to offer me the role, and I was absolutely over the moon, and still unsure about what the project really was. And so I had never, let me also be clear that I'm not a gamer.
Sure.
So I work a lot in voice work and acting in TV and film. But as a gamer, I'm not sort of in that mode. But I'm certainly heading in that direction now, believe me. There seems so much, I'm so interested about it now. But I got offered the role and was then told about it. I started my rehearsal process I was told it was going to be motion capture, and I was absolutely over the moon about that, because it was one of the things I wanted to tick off my list.
Nice.
I had never done motion capture.
Oh, wow.
The good thing about it for me was that it was like doing a film, but it was also like work. I have a huge theater background, right. And as an actor. And so it was also like doing theater, because you're doing everything that you normally would. You're walking around, you're working with the other person, you're dealing with the sets, the props, and all that sort of stuff. Although being in motion capture gear, in terms of the outfits we wear, the headgear and the cameras and all of that, that was the only thing that was different. So that took a little getting used to. But from that moment, that whole process was one of the most incredible journeys to do and to work with Hideo, who I wasn't aware of, and in some ways I'm glad that I wasn't aware of in to that degree. I had a little bit of a breakdown about his history and what he'd done, but because, once again, I'm not a gamer, I didn't realize the magnitude of of this man that I now call King. And it was in some ways for me, I think it was great, because I didn't feel there was no intimidation, there was no nervousness. As an actor, I just go in and I do what I do. You tell me what you want, I will process it, and I will try and give you exactly what you want from me. If it's not right, you direct me and tell me, where you need me to go. But I will use my own intuition as an actor and try and give you what you need.
Yeah.
And it was the easiest process. And to work with people like, Mads and Norman, those guys, they were incredible. It was like we were a team. We worked well together. We got each other. And these guys have been doing it, for ages. Like, I've been working in this industry for an incredibly long time. My name is nowhere near where theirs is, but at the same time, as actors, you put us together and we get it.
Yeah.
We get each other. We have a mutual respect for each person's talent in that respect. And it doesn't matter. We understand what it takes. We understand what the process is. And at the same time, I feel like I can learn something from everybody that I work with, and so that was, for me, it was an actor's playground.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. I mean, that's
you
the stuff
know
that when I talk to folks who work in the industry, I'm always curious to know. Again, that mutual respect is there because you're all, you love the art, you love the
Absolutely,
part that you're
absolutely.
doing means
Mm,
something to you,
mm,
and getting to work with other folks who care just as much as you do seems to
100%.
seems to always be the thing that I hear people say as being super important. So
Yes.
one of the questions I had for you was, so you get into the quote, I'm throwing the air quotes up, you get into the
Yeah.
booth, you get into the suit, you get the mocap dots on, you get ready to start the process.
Yes.
When's the like moment when you kind of are in it and you're like, oh crap, this is going to be something that, one, I've never done before, and two, this might be pretty big. Like, when's the part of the process where you kind of get to that stage?
Um, I think with me, I think it was, I I started the process in rehearsal and working on the sound stage and going through everything. I get my scripts, and I prepare those for the next couple of rehearsal days and things like that. And for me, it still didn't hit me for a while because I think I was so engrossed uh, in the process of the work that I didn't think about all the other stuff on the outside of it. And
Mm,
it wasn't until time probably went on, uh, when I realized, how much more information I was being given. And then I looked at the history of Hideo and what he had done prior to that. And I thought, well, this isn't going to be small, is it? This isn't going to be some, fly by the seat of your pants gig, and I knew that from the beginning anyway. One, it's working with Sony, it's working with
hmm.
Hideo, and not to mention, you've got this entire cast of A-list people
Uh-huh.
that are all pulling to make this project work, and also it was having to deliver the story of someone who had it in their head,
Hmm.
trying to make their vision come to life. And for me, that was my job. My
Yeah.
job was to say, you see me as this character, you've given me the as much information as I need to move forward without giving me too much, because I didn't also know the full arc of the story.
Sure.
So I was given a little bit at a time, which is wonderful for an actor in some respects, because we don't often get that. We get a script that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you know what your journey is.
Huh.
In some respects, this was challenging because I had to gauge how to play each scene that I did without going too far or not going far enough.
Huh.
Because when you don't know what the outcome is, you can
Right.
only you can only play in the present moment, which is
That's
something that
so
we as the actor should
interesting.
always try to do,
Yeah.
is to live in that moment. And so I was practically kind of, there were moments where I'm like, God, I wish I knew what was going on or where I was headed. That way I know how to play this. But at the same time, in reality, as life, we don't know what's coming next.
Sure.
We can only do what we do daily. And that is the reality of how I think, actors should work. We shouldn't really try to jump too far ahead.
Yeah.
Even if you have that beginning and middle and end, try and stay in the moment of each scene that you're working with and not think about what's coming next.
So interesting. I mean, the that part of the process, I think, is one of the peek behind the curtain things that a lot of gamers don't really get, because
Mm,
they're not privy to, the way those things work until, a
yeah,
game is already out in market, or they've already
yeah,
gotten the kind of behind the scenes snippets that will wind up being put on the
right.
disc, or something to that effect after. That's great. It's really cool to hear, the idea of wanting to be in the moment specifically
Yeah,
for those moments.
absolutely. And I think they're incredibly important. I think Norman would probably say the same thing, and Mads and Lindsay and everyone else who's worked on it, as an actor, is to try and take that particular section that you are working on and put yourself in that moment.
Hmm.
And it's incredibly important, because otherwise, if you've got the dialogue down, you know what you're saying. Now live it,
Mm.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, And it is a process. It is definitely a process, and it's not an easy task to do. You can find the joy in it
Yeah.
100% because that's what we do. But it's work. At the end of the day, it is work. But you want to also deliver something that is going to move people, or it's like watching a movie or watching anything on television. You want to be taken on a journey,
Yeah.
and in order to do that, you have to live through these characters' eyes.
Yeah, so one of the questions, and I'm happy you bridged to that. Of course, the professional that you are, making those bridges is pretty easy. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about specifically was, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, was Die Hardman's character was clouded in secrecy for a very long time, right? Even before the game was coming out, we kind of saw the initial pieces of character art that kind of popped up through the world and got put on kind of games media. And when Hideo came out in 2016 and was like, I have this game, and Norman Reedus is butt naked on the beach hanging out, running around, and then some years later we see all the other character art kind of pop up.
Yeah. Die
Hardman, I think, was the character at first when I think most people were like, what is this game going to be? What is this character going to mean to the story? When you started to read the script and then of course see how the plot kind of unfolded, what was the piece that really resonated with you when it came to Die Hardman as a character?
I think the piece that there were two, and there are the two cut scenes towards the end. I don't want to say too much just yet about anything, but it was reading those that I saw from how he was early in the game in terms of, giving Sam his missions, being there to guide him, whenever he could. But also there was the side of him who was the right hand of Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize like, okay, so you are someone who is in control. You are making sure that you run a tight ship, basically. But then to see that there's a side of him that we don't know, and his backstory, what leads him to the end of the story, you see how vulnerable he is as a human, and that for all of his bravado, that at the same time, anyone can be broken.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that I came away from really kind of loving Die Hardman's character. Because for transparency, I was given a copy early from Sony. I did a review for the Hollywood Reporter of the game, and I remember being really excited for it and kind of going through the process, because everybody, I think, has their favorite character at some point in the journey of Sam going through the world. And I remember very specifically at first, my main dude was Hartman. Like, Hartman was my boy. I was like, he's snarky, he's funny, he has this really cool way that he interacts not only with Sam but with the world. And then the turn happens for Die Hardman. And we're gonna talk a little bit about it, the very specific scene in the end in a couple of minutes. But the ability for you to bring this character to life in a way that was so unexpected was a thing where, he is so super stoic and he's like, I have everything under control. And then you see those things kind of chip away, and you see those things kind of move, and you see him like, oh, wait a minute, I have these relationships that I've had prior to everyone being privy to the story. And I am coming into these relationships with this knowledge that I have. What is it like to kind of play off of the other folks in the cast, especially when that you've all done your reads, your table reads, and you're kind of gone through the process? What's it like to then say, okay, all right, we have this really hard scene about to come up, we have to kill this, we have to nail this when we do it? Are there conversations like that amongst you and the rest of the castmates, or is it just like we just go in the room and just hit it?
Well, I think I try not to overthink things too much. And I think part of that is a trust that you are with people who know what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's an element that needs to be organic.
Mm-hmm.
So I try not to map out unless it's specific blocking, and by that I mean the staging, where you need to go, when I need to hand you something,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff, which is the, point A to point B to point C, that kind of basic stuff. But as far as the scene and the dialogue, I think that is important to just let happen.
Mm-hmm.
And evolve, because we are going to assume that each person knows what their character is,
Sure.
and their relationship. Sometimes we get a little bit of a breakdown, which always helps just before you go to shoot or rehearse it. We'll always rehearse and block things out before we try and go for a take or film it. And as long as you know what's happening in the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're trying to achieve in that scene, then it's nice to be able to sort of get the run. And you may do it 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times, just so that you get variations on it and see where the rhythms are within it. I may, in the next scene, in the next take, decide to say the line a little harsher than I did in the previous take, or just to see what works and what kind of what everyone's happy with and what feels most comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other part of that question is, we've always heard, I'm a huge Kojima fan. I've been a lover of his games for a very long time.
Right.
What's he like to work with as a director? Is he kind of like always in the room, kind of giving direction? Is he kind of just framing it for you and then saying go? What was it like working with Hideo like that?
Well, it was interesting because, one, I feel his passion.
Huh.
What it is he does, and I feel that by just looking at him. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that's about, but I look at him, and his presence just says he knows what he wants, and he's a very warm and very easy person to communicate with, aside from the fact that we speak completely different languages.
Right.
But he has an interpreter who delivers exactly what he says in a way that you completely understand. So it's like I look at him, but the interpreter is talking. So I don't look at necessarily the interpreter, but I will look at Hideo, because I get the feel from him. I see it in his eyes. I see his reactions, because it's a universal thing. If a reaction to someone is angry, it's going to be the same across the world, no matter what language you speak in, or compassion, or any of that stuff, or trying to understand. So that process was wonderful, because I felt like I was still able to communicate with him, even though we didn't speak the language. And he's so giving and accepting. And if there's something that doesn't work, you'll get the information through the interpreter. Say, let's try that again. This time, Hideo wants you to try and think of this, or move this way, or whatever. So he's there. He's got his vision. He's got his eyes on. He's got his ears open. He's with you 100% of the way.
Huh.
You
so
never feel.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You never feel lost.
Huh.
I never felt like I was left to my own devices. I always felt like I was guided 100%, of the way. I mean, I think I had freedom to do, to bring my interpretation. And I think there was a way that he would go, yes, that works for me, and if there was anything else, and if I have questions, I can ask the questions. They're relayed to him, and he'd say yes or no, or, what you're doing is perfect.
Yeah. One of the folks in the chat asked, is Hideo a perfectionist? He's a perfectionist in the way that he kind of directs in his way?
I think perfectionist in the way that is like any director. If they have a vision that is being being interpreted through an actor, and they want to make sure that's what comes across. Now, you have to remember, this story is in his head.
Sure.
And we are trying to convey that for him. So if we're creating that vision that he has in his head, and he's happy with that, that's it. I think that's all that's required of us.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as being like if he's too rigid about something or too demanding, it was never that. It was never that. It was, I think the perfection side of it is trusting the actor to do what it is that he wants to be done. Yeah. And I think he trusted all of us with his vision. And I think everyone, without a shadow of a doubt, wanted to do the best possible job they could for him.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Everybody in the chat, we're going to play a quick scene. This is a big spoiler. So if you have not played the game, you do not want to be spoiled about anything.
Turn your heads.
Turn your heads. This is a big spoiler alert. Make sure because I want to hear you on social media talking about, Kai spoiled the thing for me and I didn't get a chance to play it. So I'm gonna switch scenes. I'm gonna play this one part and then we're gonna talk to Tommie about it. So this scene is that you're about to see is from the end of the game. It's one of the last scenes of the game. I think most folks who paid attention to the game and have played the game feel like this is the scene that Tommie brought it all home. So I'm gonna play this really quickly for all of you, and let's go.
Sam. I don't expect you to forgive me. But would you hear me out? I killed Captain Clifford Unger. I would tell you I did it for America. For love of country. But I didn't. I did it for her. Because I loved her with all my heart. She was everything to me. Everything. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses. I just want you to know that not a day's gone by when I haven't thought about it. Time didn't help. Or the mask. Please. Let me finish. The captain, saved my life. You know why they call me Die Hardman? Because he wouldn't let me die.
So, okay. That was that particular scene. I have people in the chat right now talking about goddamn onions. I'm crying. I'm losing my mind out here. So first of all, I didn't want to play the whole scene because I don't want to give everything away. But everyone in the chat right now is wondering, what was it like to kind of to film that scene? What was that like?
So I'll tell you from the beginning. So I got this monologue, before going in on my day onto the mocap stage. And I read this monologue and I saw it on the storyboard. We had it all, things were up on a storyboard as well. And I just thought, this is a scene that has to be driven home. And I need to pace it. I need to think about where it's going, but at the same time, I had to live in the moment of it. So I had all the dialogue that's there. And on the day that we shot it, I prepped myself for this because I think we shot it after lunch. And when it came to it, they said, "Are you okay with doing this?" Then I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And Norman was there, and I knew what was going to happen, and so I took myself to a corner and talked to myself to say, just stay in the moment. You know what everything is. You know where it has to go. It doesn't matter what happened, but just go with how you were feeling in the moment. Because it does say where he should end up.
Yeah.
So when we were ready to go, I said, yeah, let's just go for it and see. Because, look, there's no pressure in one respect, because they go, well, if if it doesn't work out, we'll stop and we'll start again, or we'll do this. And in my head, all I wanted to do was stay in the moment and see where it went, and bring it to an end, basically. So without jumping too far ahead, so when we started to roll, I started, and we did the whole staging where I walk past Sam and I see him in the corridor and turn back, and then explain to him, what it is I want to say. And at that moment, when I say to him, I killed Clifford Unger, I could feel the heat start to go from my toes up, which only told me I was in the moment, because I looked into Norman's eyes, and Norman was brilliant. Norman was absolutely brilliant, because it was like he stared into my soul during this. And all I could do was to stay glued to his eyes from all that time. And I remember this sort of rush kind of coming up into my body. And I was thinking, this is it. And I just felt like this moment was something that was happening for real. I literally felt that it was happening for real. And as it progressed, and I started to talk about how much I loved Bridget and everything, and then that moment, saying that how much I loved her, it was all of this stuff coming from his history of everything he'd done. He's confessing to Sam about everything that he, pretended in some respects to be in one way. So it was the hardest scene I've ever had to do in my career. It definitely was one of the most emotional things I'd ever done. But for that moment, it just seemed to just go. And I think they just let the cameras run because I just had to stay in the moment, and there was no rush. And it literally happened in one take.
Whoa, that was a one take shot?
It happened in one take. None of that was spliced. I mean, we did do another take for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And Hideo's like, that was it. And I just remember everyone applauding, and everyone in absolute tears around me on the side stage going, oh my God, I can't believe I had my makeup person there, and everybody, I had to go off and pull myself together, after it, because I was literally shaking at the end of it. And they said, are you okay to do another one? He said, if you don't, we have got it. I think we've got everything that we need. And Norman was just there, and he said, just, if you don't feel it, whatever, do what you need to do. He said, but brother, you got it. It was awesome. And we decided to go for another one, and we did. And for some reason, I felt it was exactly the same. I took 5 minutes to put myself into the moment again, but I think I was so relieved that it was a one go. And I felt like everything was so truthful within that moment that even I could not stop myself from going where I went to without sort of saying what I did, but you've seen it.
Yeah.
But my body and my emotions did not let me go anywhere other than where I went with that. So I walked away from it feeling absolutely drained after work that day. I think I even on the drive home from the studio, I was replaying stuff in my head and thinking, I just need to breathe. I got to roll the windows down. I just need to I need to lift myself back up, fill myself up with some goodness here, because it was pretty full on. It was pretty full on.
Oh my goodness. I mean, so first of all, thank you for sharing that, because that just adds a whole another layer of just majesty and dopeness to that scene. Because I remember watching that moment, and lots of folks in the chat right now were like, you did that in one take, my God. Yeah. And I remember there's been this conversation that's happened in the gaming space for a very long time. There's a term called the Uncanny Valley, of course, that talks about digital representation of human beings, and there being this kind of like moment where either it kind of doesn't go far enough or it goes too far, so it doesn't really look real. Like, you know, and there's been also the conversation about, you know, when is the digital actor going to take over the role for the humans, right? And there's also been another part of that conversation that has been about, is are video games getting closer to cinema in real ways? And I've been gaming since I was 3. I'm 41 now, so it's like I've seen the gamut of everything that's happened,
right?
And seeing you emote in that scene, it was one of the first times in a real way that I said, this is what this could be. This is what digital acting could be. This is what someone who is really taking the role of course, that mixed with the technology itself, that again, like shows you in your full self, that nails both of those things. And I sat there just with my mouth on the floor because I didn't expect Die Hardman to have feels like that.
Right. No,
and
I don't think anyone would.
Yeah, no one expected that to be what that was. And also you delivering those lines in that way, and the emotion that was in your eyes that people saw, it was just like, you know, it was perfectly done. Like I'm giving you hand claps in my crib because you absolutely nailed it.
Thank you.
With that being said, the process, I'm sure, is very, very difficult, especially when you have to wind down after something like that. Was that a thing that was shot kind of towards the end of production, or was that something in some other space? Because I know sometimes they shoot things out of order.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. As far as I was concerned in my journey with working, you know, it was a long process for me, in and out of the studio. It wasn't every day, you know, but over the course of, you know, probably a year and a half, or at least, I think, you know, doing stuff. But I only had, I think, a week of actual mocap days on the soundstage, and that was my early stage. So that was done very early on, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, a lot of my other stuff was done in-game stuff was done afterwards, where I'd go into the studio and, you know, just kind of have a camera on and do my dialogue stuff or whatever, you know. So, but that physical filming of that was done pretty early on from my perspective.
Yeah. We had a question in chat that asked, what was it like for the first time to see your digital representation on the screen?
The first time I actually saw it, I think, was in the trailer. I think it was in May when they announced the release date.
Yeah. And
so you only ever saw that clip of me, I think, with the mask on, when they announce all the characters at the end of that trailer and everyone gets their kind of screen moment. So I finally saw myself in the mask, you know, just that sort of close up where I think I slightly turned and to the camera. And that was exciting to just see, because I saw myself with the lineup with everyone else and their characters. And I thought, wow, this is absolutely crazy, because, you know, you've got all your characters lined up, and then all of a sudden you're slotted in there, and there's this guy with this badass mask on, you know, staring through it, and you just think, what the hell? What is the deal? Even I was like, what is his deal? You know? What is his deal? You know, so it was crazy. And then, of course, when other things subsequently come out after that, and you get a chance to glimpse. I think not long ago we saw a trailer that had, you know, clips from the mocap session and the intercut with the actual game footage, which is a behind the scenes trailer, I think, that was released not long ago. So it gives people a chance to kind of see how the mocap works alongside the finished product. And I think the final scene for Die Hardman was one of those scenes. I think you see me with the mocap gear on, and they have a little frame of that last scene as well happening. So just for people to know that is exactly what happened. That's exactly how it was. But yeah, it's crazy to see yourself in that. In certain scenes, like the briefing trailer,
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so that was a little crazy to see as well. You know, technology is fascinating and scary, and you know, it's advancing so quickly, and I don't know where we're going to be in the next 10 years, because this is dope right now. This is crazy, absolutely crazy. So I definitely looking forward to see what it can bring for the future, and certainly in the gaming world.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Like, does this make you want to do? I mean, I've, of course, when we do our research for having folks on the show, we scroll through your IMDb's to make sure that all the stuff that you've done prior to this. And I know you've done some game work in VO work already, but like seeing this level of production and seeing this level of filmsmanship come together in this way, does this kind of give you even like more hype to be able to do more stuff like this in the future?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I have always, you know, wanted to do, whenever I got a gig that was a video game, I'm always excited about doing it, you know, and I've just never had a role that was afforded me to have such a great journey and to have such a great arc, you know, with a character before. And it's, like I said, it's also motion capture when you're doing something that has your likeness. And I have to say, I think they killed it with my likeness in this. I was like, is this film? Did we film this? Because I kind of remember doing that, but I'm sure I had a mocap suit on. I don't remember being in that costume and all, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy. I was absolutely floored by it, you know? So I think that I absolutely 100% would love to continue doing more game work. You know, like I said, I've done, you know, quite a few voiceovers for games and things like that, and creating certain characters in some games and stuff like that. But like I said, this one has sort of just hit an all-time new level for me. And also that it has resonated with so many people.
Yeah.
You know, and had so much love and support for this character. And I think part of that is because, you know, I know it's funny because I feel like he just yaks all the way through the game. And I haven't played the game yet. I only just posted a picture that I've got. I finally have everything to play the game. So at some point, maybe over the weekend, I might actually start it. So, you know, I think everyone's like, oh, this guy's going to get on my nerves. All he's doing is giving a mission here, giving a mission there, yak. And someone's like, how many times does he say Sam? Sam, you know, Sam. I'm like, hey, that's the dude's name. That's his name. I mean, what do you want me to call him?
I can't front. It was really cool to see you basically tell Norman Reedus to basically do his version of the Wiz and go down the road and just take your behind all the way to the west side. I can't front. That really did make me really happy. I was like, Die Hardman's like, Sam Porter Bridges, you want to take your behind and walk that way.
that way.
And don't stop until I tell you to stop. That really, I'm not going to lie, it made me really laugh.
That's funny. It's the only chance I'll probably get to like really give some serious orders to people and just go, do this. You know, this is it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
These are your options. Yeah.
One of the cool things also is, of course, folks who know about Spawn on Me, they understand that we love to talk about diversity representation and having folks be seen in the games that we play. One of the best parts, especially about your character and the way that you played him and the way that it was framed in the story, was it was really dope to see this black male character be forceful, but also be emotional, and also like run the gamut of all these kinds of beings within this game. And I know on my feed, you know, folks, when they finally got a chance to play it, they were like, this feels good in a way just because of that alone. That's a thing that we've been asking for. It's the thing that Kojima games haven't really been known to be able to portray well.
Right.
What's it feel like to kind of bring that part to the table in a real way as well? Like that representation is important, and it was really cool to be able to see you kind of pull all those things together in this character too.
And you know, honestly, I think in some respects I applaud I 100% applaud the fact that they've taken that step to cast a a black actor in this role.
Yeah.
At the time I got it, I didn't think about that because
Yeah.
for me it's the work. I don't think that I should ever have to worry about, am I cast because I'm black?
Sure.
Am I do you know what I mean? I try not to ever think about those things. And even though I know how important they are, if we see it visually, we get it and we can acknowledge it and applaud that.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
But as the actor, I don't go into it thinking, yeah, I've got this, I'm a black actor. I'm going to represent, I'm going to do it, because I think the work is going to do that for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I am 100%, I'm honored to be a part of the project. I'm honored to be able to have worked with this incredible genius of a man and to kind of get to know what he's all about.
Yeah.
Honored to work with my peers in these top-notch actors who are also a part of this. And at the end of that, then I can also say, and I'm proud to be a black man who is standing alongside these people representing in a game of this standard and this quality, and also to be a serious character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It is a character with integrity. It is a character that has a mission to try and go for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is something about trying to, I need you, we need you to go west, and we need you to help bring America back together. This is his mission.
I just got chills hearing you say that. Oh, for real, for real. I don't lie. I just got chills hearing you say that for real, for real. I heard that for so many hours. I was like, oh my God, he just said it. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's quite no, man. But that's it. And even I felt like it was, trying to bring some semblance of reality to it. That everything, this project is a mission on what's mirror on what's going on in our world today. I think it's very poignant. I think the message is very clear about what we need to do, and the whole thing about connecting. And I started hashtagging respect and connect, and I thought this makes perfect sense to me, man. It is so about that right now. And I think that, like I said, to play this character, to be a black man playing it, and to represent in a way that is a positive light.
Yep.
Yep. I feel honored. I'm privileged. I'm absolutely over the moon with, and I feel incredibly supported by so many people who, of diversity, who can also look at it and go, if there's some a young black actor out there who's thinking, I'd love to be able to do that. If I can make that, stand for someone and they feel, well, if he can do it, I want to follow along in those footsteps and I want to be able to do something, then you fucking go and do it. Pardon me, I don't know if you got to bleep that out or what.
I'm keeping that all the way in. Nope. That'll stay in all of it. Exactly.
Go do it. A dream, your dream it's a birthright. It is given to you, and it is entirely up to you to take those steps and follow through. And don't let anybody ever tell you that you cannot do something, And it's a passion for me because I've known people who've fallen by the wayside by not fulfilling or going after things that they want to in life. And there's absolutely no reason, there are life circumstances that come and can be a road, but where there is a will, there is a way, and if you've got it within you to have that will, believe me, you will find a way.
Man, Tommie, time has flown. Like time has flown by. I think that's a great place to leave it. I was gonna talk about you going to you being working and being taught at Alvin Ailey, which is a thing I didn't know. Classically trained in ballet, which is a thing I did not know.
Oh man. There's a whole lot of strings to that.
Oh my God. And like I didn't even know that you were in Dolomite Is My Name, which I'm super excited to see soon.
But I did voice work on that, so I'm not visually in it. But...
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. But man, I am thank you again for coming through to Brookago, hanging out with me and the rest of the Spawn and Me family. Again, your role and the way that you nailed it and killed it, you have like set the bar very, very high for many folks to come after you in this work. And it is a pleasure to have you. And please, whenever you want to come by, there is a space for you here. You can rock with us.
That's awesome.
Whenever you want.
Thank you very much. I will definitely be in touch, and I will definitely stop by again.
Yes.
Definitely.
For the folks at home who want to check out more of your work, or at least follow you on Twitter to see how you're liking the game, because I'm sure you're going to be able to play it soon. Where's the best place for them to check out you on social media?
You can check me out on Twitter at TJ84. That's TEEJA84. Instagram, Tommie Earl Jenkins Official. That's Tommie _Earl _ Jenkins on Instagram. Facebook, I've got a Facebook page as well, which you can find me on. I try to sort of everything on all platforms whenever I do it. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But yeah, those are the things you can catch.
Awesome, fam. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Stick around for a little bit because there's some folks in the chat who would love to throw a couple of questions your way. Everybody who's listening here on Podcast Land, X-Ray Land, and on Twitch Land, man, this was a fantastic show. I'm so excited that we were able to hang and have Tommie rock with us this week. Make sure you're checking us out everywhere on all podcast platforms. Make sure you're checking out our Patreon at patreon.com/spawnonme. I just started a new show called Some More Thoughts. So you'll be able to hear me talk about other stuff that may not always be about gaming, some cultural stuff, some current events things, and all that to go along with that. But if you're here on Twitch, stick around. If you're here in podcast land, I love you. We will see you all next week. Much love and peace.